But I found that my comedy skills that I was learning were starting to translate into the workplace. I was able to collaborate better with my team. I wasn't interrupting people as often in my sales calls, and I ended up becoming the full-time salesperson. I was able to kind of tell the story better. Then Laughed Out Events started because I wanted to throw comedy shows in my office. We had an amazing stage and lighting, and they were like, go throw a show in here if you'd like. And I did, and it was awesome. We had like 100 plus people every night. The best comics in New York were coming. I was hosting the show, and I was just like, this is awesome. And then I made the jump right a month before the pandemic. I was like, let's go all in on in-person comedy after work. And then like 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit, and I was like, what are you doing, you moron? But when you laugh, your endorphins increase. When you laugh, you also have a decrease in your stress hormone of cortisol. So that is like the first thing, good feelings, bad feelings. That's the first thing that can happen.
Welcome back to the Hustle and Grind podcast, the show where we dig into why real entrepreneurs trade comfort for conviction. This isn't about vanity metrics or overnight success. It's about the stories behind building a reputation that actually matters. I'm your host, Andrew, keynote architect, platform builder, and fellow founder in the trenches. Today, I'm sitting down with Kevin Hubschmann, the founder of Laugh.Inc. Kevin is a unique breed of entrepreneur who realized that the boardroom and a comedy club have more in common than we think. Through his platforms, Laugh.Events and the Laugh.Rx newsletter, he's pioneering a laughing and development training method that treats comedy skills like active listening, adaptability, and presence as genuine professional superpowers. He spent years in the trenches blending behavioral science with improv to help teams level up their creativity and confidence. We're going to talk about why taking risks is the ultimate growth lever and how he's building a business centered on the idea that laughter isn't just a break from work, it's the secret to doing work better. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show today. You have the honor, I think, of being the first comedian on the show. So looking forward to chatting with you today. And I really love what you're doing in an industry I heard you refer to as laughing and development. So want to hear kind of what you're going into. And first of all, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, yeah, I've been doing comedy since 2013. And so we've been at it for a while, training in, improv comedy, performing improv comedy, training in stand-up, performing stand-up. And, I've done that all while running, either being a part of a fast-growing business or running my own business, Laughed Out Events, which I'm doing now. But yeah, I've always believed that comedy skills are best used as off the stage, just as they are on the stage. And I feel like there's a lot of professionals that can use comedy skills. And I'm not talking about jokes, also knowing the difference between jokes and comedy skills, but using comedy skills in their professional world to level themselves up.
Well, let's go into that for a second, because you said there's a difference between just telling jokes and comedy skills. What is the difference in tactics there?
Yeah. So when you hear jokes, everyone knows what a joke is, right? Setup, punchline, tag, whatever it might be. When I'm talking about comedy skills, I'm talking about active listening, empathetic communication, going off script, yes-anding people. What are the opportunities in which you can collaborate best with folks and create really good dialogue so that there is this improvisation that you're doing with one another, but it's very natural and it's organic, and you're really thinking at the top of your intelligence, and you're coming up with, very authentic and real, vulnerable things. And creating that trust with other people. And so that's really what I believe is the skill sets that people can come and take away from. It's the same skills that improvisers use with each other when they're performing. It's the same skills that stand-ups use when they're trying to connect with an audience. And it's how do you really hone in on these skills and use them. And those actually can generate laughter just as much as a joke can, except the laughter kind of goes for the whole conversation or thereafter. Whereas a joke has a very ephemeral ending to it. And it's fun, but it's very the air gets let out of the balloon pretty fast. So it's really about creating rapport. And that's what I believe comedy skills are all about.
Yeah. It usually ends with me in a groan because dad jokes are my gift to the world. But, you know,
there you go.
Different skill set.
There's a time and a place for it. A time and a place.
Usually around my teenage niece.
That'll do it.
But I think you said something before we started the interview today that I think is really relevant, and I hadn't thought of before, so I want to bring it forward to the audience, that there's a specific skill set that you can take, that you can parlay from the comedy skills, not just telling jokes, but comedy skills into the entrepreneur world. Go into a little bit about that. Like, what are the skills that you can take between one and the other?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been someone that was really interested in trying new things, and so I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs have in common, is that they have an interest in kind of putting themselves out there. But I think there's a lot of opportunities where it's harder to do that. You know, we have social media now where you can kind of make a video and you have to wait for people to reply, and then you might be like, "Oh no, this is not worth it. I have no likes." But I actually found that the best way to kind of do that cold plunge of trying something new was actually going and doing an open mic. And so going to do an open mic is probably the scariest thing that you can invite entrepreneurs to do, because they are going and taking a chance in front of so many different people and kind of saying like, "Hey, here's my idea." You know, and there's going to be maybe like one or two laughs. It does not matter how good your idea is. An open mic is going to ruin your confidence. But if you get like one little bit of a laughter or a groan or anything, it's this idea of like, okay, that's something. And that's really all people need, is like a murmur for people to say, okay, that's something I can do. And even if you do bomb and you bomb badly, that is just the first step you need to go and saying, okay, I survived that. I can do it again. Let me go at it again and let me try again. And so it also builds this resilience. So this idea of going up there and trying something new really gives people the opportunity to say, okay, I survived that really scary thing, and now I'm going to do it again, because that's all we should be doing, is putting one foot in front of the other and trying again. And who cares what other people think? Like, this is something that I'm doing, and this is going to be my journey, and I'm going to build up grit, and I'm going to keep going and building up grit. And I think that me doing that early on in my career, I was also in a sales role, so that, you know, there's tons of failure in that. I love to soak up failure. You know, I love to just be like, how do I fail? Because that allows you to kind of know all the things that are not going to go well, and eventually you start to see a path of what can go well.
And that's basically also entrepreneurship, is you fail repeatedly before anything actually goes well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and taking that chance, stepping out and being vulnerable is a huge part of that walk, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's armor you suddenly have. You know, you're going into battle with armor, and you're, I said this to you off air. Someone had said this earlier. I picked it up, was you got to see how the glass breaks. You know, you got to be able to see what is going to go wrong so that you don't make that mistake next time. But then also knowing that if you do make that mistake, you will survive. And I think it's also something I learned in comedy, is that I would ask so many stand-up comedians before we'd go up or after we'd go up, because they'd kill. And I go, you know, do you still get nervous before a show? And they say, yeah, I get nervous, but it's a different kind of nervousness. There's a difference between fear and nervousness. Fear is the first feeling that you get when it's something's new and you don't know how it's going to go. But then nervousness is actually this feeling of, I've done this before. I'm not scared, but I want it to go well. I'm invested in it. So people also knowing that, like, you have to get over that hump of fear to then get into this feeling of nervousness, that you can actually then kind of use that feeling and, you know, put it into something else and turn that nervous energy into something that's exciting.
I love the way you said that there's a difference between the fear and the nervousness. And I like that a lot. I think with public speakers, I work with a lot of public speakers, and that's one of the things, is that nervousness. It never really goes away, but it's something that kind of keeps you on your toes because you're so invested. I love that part.
It means you care. I mean, yeah. I think that's, I think also once you realize what the fear is that you have, like, you know, I was doing a show and my family had come to see me, and I was in the back of the I was like in the kitchen area where the comics were all hanging out. And if you saw me, I was doing body squats, trying to just get my adrenaline down. And I wasn't scared, I was just very invested. I really wanted it to go well. And it was a big audience and it was in my hometown. And, it was something I really cared about. So I think that also helped me not be concerned and just be like, no, this is normal. This is a normal feeling that you're having. And now use it to your advantage, and just know that you're not scared. You're just really excited.
And I think it's an intrinsic part of excellence is we're all very invested in what we do. We want to do the best we can. And that's just kind of comes part and parcel with it. So I guess the question that I have next for you, because I like to hear the backstory, before Laugh.events, what were you doing?
So I was one of the first 10 employees at this software startup called Splash. It was an event marketing software. And I was just like, I want to work at a startup. I just love the energy of it. I studied entrepreneurship in college, and they gave me a shot to just kind of be a swing player, whatever was needed was kind of what I was going to be doing. And at that same time, that's when I started training in improv comedy. I started, me and my best friend and my two brothers started an improv group called the Brothers and Flaws. And we had a private instructor, and we would just move all my brother's furniture out of his apartment, move it around, which is already a small apartment to begin with. But then we would do improv for 3 hours a week. And we did that for about a year. And we just trained, and it was just fun. Like when I did it, it was just like, this is fun. We're laughing. We're having a really good time. But it was also while I was, starting in this new professional role where I didn't really know what my professional skills were, except for just like excitement and grit and maybe just a different perspective. But I found that my comedy skills that I was learning were starting to translate into the workplace. I was able to collaborate better with my team. I wasn't interrupting people as often in my sales calls, and I ended up becoming the full-time salesperson. I was able to kind of tell the story better and go off script and not and be very curious on the call. It was all of these different skills that I was doing with the Brothers and Flaws on stage were able to translate immediately. And that's just when I was like, okay, comedy's got a skill other than me trying to become, a member of Saturday Night Live. I can use this as ability to kind of cross-train in my professional world. So I kept doing improv, and then I eventually got into stand-up comedy. And then Laugh.events started because I wanted to throw comedy shows in my office. We had an amazing stage and lighting, and they were like, go throw a show in here if you'd like. And I did, and it was awesome. We had like 100 plus people every night. The best comics in New York were coming. I was hosting the show, and I was just like, this is awesome. I don't know what the hell I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to make money from this, but like I have the passion. I love it. And, that was when my passion for it started to go my passion at my day job. And I was like, okay, let's make the jump. And then I made the jump right a month before the pandemic. I was like, let's go all in on in-person comedy after work. And then like 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit, and I was like, what are you doing, you moron? But then we got into virtual comedy, and that skyrocketed, and that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, that's got to be a pivot. Not only just saying, hey, I finally have the ability to just jump off of this cliff, and then having to pivot very quickly. What was that like? Like, what did you do? What trouble did you come across? How did you overcome it? I kind of want to hear the story behind that.
Yeah, I mean, after I screamed into every pillow I could find in my house, I mean, it was really, frankly, what happened, a big turning point for me. I was like, what do I want to do? Like, it was almost I had left my job. The world had stopped. It was also, there was no rush for me to get back to work because like I wasn't spending a lot of money, and I had squirreled away a little bit of money to hold on and think a little bit. And I remember reading this book. It was like My Catcher in the Rye, so to speak, but it was like it was Nike and the Men Who Built It or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was the non-Phil Knight version of the Nike story. He was everything but him. Yeah. And it just was like these guys and these people that were just really passionate about what they do. And it it was this moment where I was like, okay, I want to be passionate about what I'm doing. I'm very excited about this. So let me just go and see what else I can do in this space. This is my passion. Let me find that. So I found inspiration, looking at other stories, and that helped me. But then from a comedy perspective, my boss actually was like, hey, do you want to go and host the, Shabbat dinner that we're doing over Zoom? And I was like, sure. But actually, I know a lot of comics that are out of work right now, and they are legally not allowed to perform in any clubs. Let me go and see if some of those comics that I had been working with in these afterwork shows, if they can do it, because I'm good, but like you can get someone great, and you can get someone that should be in a theater. So that's when I started linking up with some incredible comedians and saying, hey, do you want to do my friend's birthday party? Do you want to do a Shabbat dinner? Do you want to do, this anniversary, whatever it might be? And then eventually those folks were like, do you want to do it for our company? And we then got into we said, all right, the business is corporate. And so let's get deeper into the corporate comedy world. And that's how it all started.
So talk to me a little bit about that the corporate comedy world and how you're actually integrate. Like, what are some of the things that you teach inside that world?
Yeah. So, it started with virtual comedy, and then the pandemic, it was winding down, and then everyone was like, okay, we don't want to, I was like, great, now bring a comedian in. And they were like, we have to be a little bit more strict with our money. This was like when there was like a little bit of a looming financial crisis. So everyone started to say, hey, we got to hold on to our dollars right now. And so I said, all right, how do I, again, pivot one more time and say, what else can we do? And I started thinking back to to why I got into this in the first place and why I was excited. And it was, I was training in improv comedy, and that made me better at my job. So let me start to offer training and development to people, because knowing in my time in the events world, I knew that, entertainment, T&E budgets, travel and entertainment, they will die down. But when it comes to learning and development and training and development, there's always going to be a little bit room for there. So that's when I linked up with this amazing director of psychology at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Natalie DiTillo. And I was like, tell me what about laughter? You know what I mean? Like, why is laughter valuable? And so we started to do talks together, which was really cool. And we started getting deeper into like, why is laughter valuable from a biological standpoint? And so that was the pivot that I made. I said, how do we make laughter more of a wellness tool? But then we also said, how do we make laughter more of a training and professional development tool? And that's when we started to go really deep into what we now call laughing and development. And that is using these improv training and stand-up training to then go into companies, whether you're a sales team, marketing team, or just the whole team, and say, what do you want to focus on? Do you want to be better listeners? Do you want to communicate with each other better? Do you just want to have better team chemistry? And we create custom curriculums for these people, and then they have those outcomes. And everything that we do in these sessions is tailored around their ultimate outcome, which is, being a better business professional with your team.
So go through, because this is, I think, a correlation that a lot of people might think about, but they don't actually have like specific things. What are some of the specific benefits of like the laughter in the corporate world? I think we all kind of know what it is, but I'd love to hear it from you've studied this a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you laugh, I'll kind of talk biologically what happens when you laugh, because I also really believe we do our virtual comedy shows all the time. We do in-person comedy, but I'm always a believer in our virtual comedy events because they're so funny and very accessible, but also the benefits that can happen, especially with a remote team. But when you laugh, your endorphins increase. When you laugh, you also have a decrease in your stress hormone of cortisol. So that is like the first thing, good feelings, bad feelings. That's the first thing that can happen. Another thing that can happen is that it could release other social bonding hormones like oxytocin and I believe serotonin. And I might be getting one of those wrong, but the social bonding hormones are released too. So you're feeling a connection with other people when you're laughing at other things. So there's a feeling good perspective, and then there's a social bonding perspective. And then when it comes to when you throw in something like laughing in development, where you can learn about something, there's studies that have been shown that when you associate laughter with something that you've learned, you're able to learn it and pick it up. And it's like a mile marker in your brain of remembering that a lot better. So there's better memory tied also with laughter. So that was another thing of saying, okay, when we found that out, we said that's what we should be really going in, is how can we let people laugh and have fun with each other, which is what these sessions are. But subliminally, they are going to be learning how to listen better. They're going to empathetically communicate. The idea of listening is like, that's what improv is all about. It's like, how do I not interrupt you so I can hear what you're giving me? And then whatever you do, I'm going to validate what you're saying with yes and then I'm going to certainly not say anything like no, but, or, teaching that stuff in our classes a lot. Because then I can you've hit the ball to me. Now I can take it and I can hit the ball back to you. And if I set that standard, that's how our communication relationship is going to work. And now we can kind of do a ton more with that. If you're now listening and empathetically communicating to me, and I'm listening and empathetically communicating to you, we have such an amazing foundation where we can now get vulnerable with each other because we trust one another and we know that we're being heard. So as you can tell, I haven't talked about like jokes any time. Like, it's not about that. It's really about like, these are skills that people do to make sure that they, are being heard so that they can take that chance and the other person's going to have their back.
Yeah. And it 100% makes sense. Having had to give trainings that were basically check a box or were not relational at all. I called it academic assault at one point, which is some of what we had to do. Yeah. Having the ability to break down those boundaries of somebody saying, great, we just, we're going to get an hour off work and that's the only benefit to training, and being able to turn that around is a really powerful tool.
Totally. I mean, I think that's really where people also go. We do surveys before the event and after the event. Nice. And we ask them to tell us how they feel going into it and how they feel after. Everybody, no matter what it is, they're always dragging their butts going into it. They're just like, I do not want to be here. And that's just kind of like, frankly, the vibe of professional trainings. It's just like, what is this again? So that was another thing that we wanted to stick out, is like, why does work have to be so tense, and like, why does it have to have so much like, boring aspects to it? And so we really wanted to be a little bit different there and have people come into it being really excited. And everything that we do after, the words that they use after to share their experience, are complete antonyms of what they had going into it. And it's like excited, inspired, like ready to rock, like open to new perspectives. And, that's why I call it, people go into it with their 9 to 5 personalities and they come out of it with their 5 to 9 personalities showing. And you kind of get a well-rounded version of these folks, because so many people, myself included, this is a lesson I learned early on. I came to work with my 9 to 5 personality because I was almost taught that early on, like calling out in class all the time and being the class clown. Like, my dad sat me down at one point and was like, you can't be such a class clown all the time. And so, I remember early on being like, I got to fix this. And then I later learned that was one of my benefits, obviously knowing and when to pick and choose your, spots. But that 5 to 9 personality is something that people really put away. And they're like, this is who I am at work or in front of other people that I want to respect me. But no, you need to find ways to bring that 5 to 9 into your 9 to 5, because that's really what your X factor is.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take a second to actually say you also have a podcast. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like,
I don't have a podcast. I have a newsletter. Okay. But the newsletter is called Laugh RX, and it focuses on using comedy skills. And we kind of look at different comedians over time and kind of say, what can we learn from these different comedians? And then we also try to tie it into, some sort of science-related aspect of it, of being like, okay, what the comedian said in an offhand interview about, taking chances is actually, backed up by science. And so that's kind of how we try to take a lot of things, like use a comedian's perspective on their own craft to help people relate it back to their specific passion or their professional lives. And so we're always just trying to teach people about how to learn and grow your professional skills while kind of seeing it through the eyes of a comedian.
Cool. And if you guys want, you can take a look at laughrx.laugh.events and book that. You can also take a look at Laugh.events and to find out a little bit more about Kevin. All of those will be in the show notes. Kevin, thank you so much for being on today. This has been an awesome conversation because I love what you're doing inside the L&D community and bringing that talent for being the class clown into the classroom and make it a little bit, and help people learn. It's always appreciated, man.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle and Grind podcast, where we unpack what it really takes to build something that matters. If today's conversation hit home, do me a favor. Share it with someone who's in the trenches too. And if you're building your own brand, platform, or message and want help turning that story into serious authority, head over to theauthorityforge.com to see how we can help. Until next time, keep showing up, keep shipping, and keep chasing the work that sets you on fire. I'm Andrew, and this was the Hustle and Grind podcast.